Shocking truth revealed, shy woman's pain transforms after CEO hears an unexpected conversation. Emily's heart thumped in her chest as she stood in the sterile break room, the hum of fluorescent lights casting an unflattering glare over the gleaming surfaces. She had spent countless hours perfecting her latest project, a breakthrough in gene therapy that could change lives, but all that sat heavy on her heart today was the echo of laughter coming from the adjoining conference room. She peered through the glass, breath hitching as she caught sight of Jason, the charismatic CEO, and Dr. Larson, the company's rising star. Their conversation danced around her, but it felt like a cruel masquerade. "They're never going to notice, are they?" she muttered under her breath, paralysis setting in as dread coiled around her chest. The pit of her stomach churned as the laughter intensified, and suddenly, the walls felt as if they were closing in. It was supposed to be a moment of triumph, yet here she was, an unseen specter, her father's legacy suffocating under the weight of mediocre acknowledgement. "I poured everything into this project, and for what?" Despite her resolve, her voice was a mere whisper against the buzzing hesitance enveloping her. She had always been the quiet achiever, tucked away in the shadows of more audacious peers. Yet this felt different. A volcano of anger she had kept dormant began to rumble deep inside. It became unbearable when she heard Jason mockingly muse about her latest findings, her hard work transmogrified into a punchline. Fueled by a surge of raw emotion, Emily's feet propelled her forward before she had the chance to think. "I'm right here," she shouted, her voice slicing through the laughter like a knife. Silence fell, thick and heavy, and the sudden attention felt like an avalanche heading her way. Her hands trembled as the weight of years of insecurity and unfulfilled expectations crashed down upon her. "You don't get to trivialize my work." The shock on their faces mirrored her own spiraling confusion, a whirlwind of despair and determination. She had crossed a line, had broken a lifelong silence that had cloaked her. No longer would fear stifle her ambitions. Shaking, she withdrew to her desk, the words she had unleashed echoing in her mind. For the first time, she felt like a warrior, and yet uncertainty gnawed at her insides. "Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue." Days turned into eerie stalemates, tension filled the air as she replayed her confrontation over and over again. But amidst the chaos, she discovered something buried in her father's old attic, crumpled papers holding the secrets to an unpatented formula, remnants of a man who had walked the tightrope of scientific brilliance and personal despair. The promise of harnessing that knowledge flickered like a candle as hope intertwined with dread. And then, unexpectedly, Jason approached her, a hesitant olive branch extended after the storm of her confrontation. Their discussions evolved into robust dialogues in his sleek office, where Emily shared her father's discoveries with passion ignited anew. Yet, as alliances formed, shadows lurked within the corporate structure, whispers of dissent wrapping around her fragile confidence. The looming threat of overshadowing scrutiny tightened like a noose, and her drive frayed at the edges. Emily could almost taste their doubt. Was she fighting for herself, or merely addressing the ghosts of her father's legacy? As whispers of rival factions swirled, worry crashed over her like waves. Would her passion shatter or transform them all? With each tick of the clock, the pressure mounted, her path obscured by moral dilemmas and emotional strife. Would she sink into the depths of corporate complacency, or rise to claim the respect her father deserved? The road ahead was treacherous, each heartbeat echoing with urgency, as the tension of what came next loomed large. Emily's fingers tapped nervously against her keyboard, the sound almost drowned out by the chaotic thoughts swirling in her mind. It had been a week since her confrontation, and though the initial impact had fallen into a tentative truce, the fragile alliances she had built with Jason and the team felt like glass, shiny and appealing, but dangerously close to shattering. Every day now began with a mix of anticipation and dread. Each time she entered the office, the echo of her own voice from that fateful day resonated ominously within her. She was caught between ambition and fear. The walls of the corporate structure she had once navigated with ease now felt like a labyrinth fraught with traps. During meetings, she found herself instinctively shrinking back, hesitant to share her ideas, replaying her previous outburst in her head. What if it had been a mistake? Maybe Jason, amused by her moment of weakness, was no longer interested in her father's work. Or worse, what if he viewed her as a liability? With every glance shared across the boardroom table, the doubt painted vibrant strokes of insecurity across her mind. Yet a flicker of resolve began to replace her uncertainty as she uncovered more of her father's research hidden among old journals. Late nights spent sifting through his handwritten notes became both her sanctuary and a source of fierce determination. Each data burst of insight brought her closer to unveiling the groundbreaking formula her father had dreamt of, a formulation that could revolutionize not only her career but also the lives it could ultimately touch. Still, the atmosphere was thick with tension, rivalries simmering below the surface. Emily sensed the skeptical gazes of her colleagues, whispers following her like shadows. Dr. Larson seemed particularly disdainful, each smile carried a hint of mockery behind it. The competitive undercurrents in the lab whispered that any misstep on her part could reaffirm their assumptions that she was merely her father's daughter, rather than a woman capable of standing alone. The pivotal moment arrived unexpectedly. During a presentation on her father's findings to the leadership team, she felt every eye fixate upon her, their expectant expressions fueling her anxiety. As she spoke about the potential applications of his research, an all-too-familiar sensation of inadequacy threatened to seep back in. In the silence that followed her presentation, Emily noticed Jason lean forward, his expression serious. "This is impressive work, Emily. But do you truly believe that you can fulfill your father's vision?" His question hung in the air, the weight of it suffocating and liberating all at once. She hesitated for a breathless moment, facing the repercussions of her answer. "I can't do it alone," she admitted, the realization crystallizing within her. "But I will." She paused, summoning every ounce of determination she could muster. "I will prove his legacy deserves to be recognized in its own right, with or without the whispers." The room filled with a tense murmur, surprise barely masked among her peers. The stakes had changed. It was no longer about just her father's legacy. It was about uncovering her own identity, a fusion of history and newfound bravery. Yet, even as her words circled like a gust of fresh air, an unsettling thought clawed at her insides. If she lifted her head above the crowd, wouldn't she become an even bigger target? With this choice came an inevitable confrontation she could no longer run from. As the meeting adjourned, Jason's lingering gaze implied both admiration and uncertainty. Emily could feel the eyes of her colleagues digging into her back, suspicion dancing behind their thin smiles. She was on the precipice of something raw, and even though doubt clung to her, she felt the stirrings of a flame within one that promised to grow into something unstoppable. She left that presentation humming with an energy that ignited her core, but as she passed by Dr. Larson, a fleeting look of disdain crossed his features, igniting a steel resolve within her. The time had come to confront not just the ghosts of her pedigree but also the very real threats within her professional life. As she sat at her desk, searching for a plan to navigate the storm ahead, her phone vibrated with a message from Jason. "Can we meet later? I need to discuss our next steps." Her stomach knotted. She knew then that she was about to enter an uncharted battle, one where the opposing forces were well aware of her vulnerabilities and keen to exploit them. What lay ahead would either solidify her path as a leader in her own right or unravel everything she fought for. The stakes had risen, and one thing became clear: Emily was about to face the heart of the very storm she had been trying to navigate, and new alliances might be the key to surviving it all. Would she rise to the challenge, or would the threats consume her ambitions whole? Emily took a deep breath as she paced her office, grounding herself in the quiet moments before her meeting with Jason. The fluorescent lights flickered overhead, casting stark shadows that mirrored the uncertainty swirling within her. With each step, she reminded herself of the transformation she sought not just in her professional world but within herself. She needed to reclaim her voice and her authority, not merely as her father's daughter but as someone with expertise and vision. The minutes crawled by until finally, she gathered her notes and made her way to Jason's office. The deep mahogany of the door felt imposing, yet she felt an undeniable fire of determination rise within her. If she didn't seize this opportunity, would she risk falling back into the silence that had plagued her? She knocked and entered without waiting for a response. Jason looked up from his desk, surprise flickering across his expression. His office was small but organized, filled with awards and accolades that seemed to press in on her as she sat across from him. "Thanks for coming, Emily," he said, his tone earnest. "I wanted to discuss the next stages of your father's research and how we can support you." That word, support, struck a chord within her. "Thank you, Jason. I believe I need more than just support, I need to be integrated into the project as an equal." The admission hung in the air, charged with gravity. Jason leaned back, studying her. "You're right. Your father's work is monumental, and I want you to be at the forefront of this. The truth is, I've seen your ability to drive the discussions in meetings. But the team still views you as unsteady. Their perception doesn't reflect my capabilities," Emily fired back, drawing strength from the confrontation. "I've worked tirelessly to contribute. I'm not just a part of my father's legacy, I am the legacy seeking its own foothold." "Then let us shape that legacy," he replied, his eyes glinting with newfound respect. "I think it's time we consider letting you lead the next presentation for potential investors. It will be a great opportunity to showcase not only your father's revolutionary ideas but your own vision as well." A surge of excitement mixed with dread coursed through her veins. It was what she had been pushing toward all along, yet it was also a daunting leap into the unknown. What if I falter? What if they see through me? She questioned, the depth of vulnerability threatening to seep into her resolve. "Or they might see you as a force to be reckoned with," Jason countered, his tone firm as he leaned forward. "You need to embrace this. They are waiting for your authenticity." As the conversation shifted toward strategy and potential investment angles, Emily began to perceive the shades of possibility looming ahead, her doubts giving way to tangible plans. They were building a bridge, and with each piece they constructed, she could feel her confidence scaffolded by their collaboration. Words she thought would escape her held firm as she articulated the ways her father's findings could engage the market differently. Minutes passed while they dissected ideas and formulated hypotheses, but as they prepared to wrap up, the door swung open abruptly, and Dr. Larson stepped inside, his derisive laughter filling the air like a foul mist. "Are we listening to the child of the great researcher now?" Larson sneered, his eyes bouncing between Emily and Jason. "You both really think she'll lead anything? It's commendable that you trust her, Jason, but she's got her daddy's coattails to hold on to." Emily felt a tremor of rage rise within her, a fierce protective instinct igniting against Larson's condescending tone. She had hoped to rise above, but the familiar sting of being belittled thrust itself into her gut. Jason shot a warning glance at Larson, but Emily knew the battle had shifted. She could either retreat into silence or confront the threat head-on. "Dr. Larson," she began, her voice steady despite the tremble in her heart, "I may be my father's daughter, but I am also my own woman. And I'm here to show you and everyone else that I have something to prove." The challenge in her voice filled the room, catching both men off guard. Emily watched as Larson's smirk faltered, uncertainty flickering in his eyes. She realized then that this moment could redefine not just her standing in the workplace but also her connection to her own capabilities. "Jason," she continued, feeling a rush of empowerment, "I'm ready to take the lead, but I need your support in this support that stands unwavering against anyone who doubts me." The tension thickened in the room, an electrifying stale air that promised a confrontation. The next step would either solidify her place or push her further into the storm. With the looming shadow of Larson and the weight of her own ambitions pressing down on her, Emily felt the tides turning. Would she command respect in the face of doubt, or would she crumble under the pressure? The core of her resolve trembled, but she was no longer willing to ignore the power bubbling beneath the surface, ready to unleash against her adversaries. The time had come for action. But as the discussion turned to strategy, Emily made a mental note there was more at stake than just her career. Her journey toward independence had just begun, and the ripples of this moment would resonate far beyond their small circle. As they wrapped up, Larson's smirk returned, fading into a sickly smile. "We'll see how well you do, Emily," he taunted before leaving the office. Each click of the door tightened the knot in her stomach, but she felt a tether of strength anchor deep within her. "Don't let him deter you," Jason reminded, a steadfastness in his eyes now igniting a glimmer of hope in her own. As she left the office, reeling from the confrontation, Emily made a silent vow: this time, she would not be silenced. The calling of the ambitious leader she aspired to be reverberated in her mind. Yet, even as she felt the thrill of determination swell within her, a deeper dread pierced through the edges of her confidence. What lengths would she have to go to ensure not only her success but the kind of respect that would silence proponents of her doubt? And something deeper loomed beyond the immediate battle, a whisper of a secret buried in her father's notes, a mystery that might transform everything again. Would uncovering that secret be a blessing or a curse? A flickering unease ignited in her thoughts as she made her way back to her desk, her heart pounding with the taste of both power and peril. Emily settled into her desk, the rush from her earlier confrontation still coursing through her. The weight of the moment she had seized gnawed at the edges of her consciousness, spurring both exhilaration and nerves. As she opened her laptop, the familiar screen blurred momentarily before focusing on the endless notes from her father's research. She had always felt a deep connection to those papers. They were imbued with his ambition, trials, and triumphs. Yet today, they felt like an anchor, holding her back from the exhilarating heights she dared to reach. The sound of fingers tapping on keyboards filled the office, a constant reminder of the diligence surrounding her. But Emily's mind drifted to Larson's derision, the way it stung her pride while simultaneously lighting a fire she hadn't fully realized was there. She opened her father's notes, frantically searching for anything an edge, a revelation that could strengthen her upcoming presentation. The weight of doubt lingered, whispering that she needed more than just belief, she required tangible evidence of her worth. As she sifted through the documents, one phrase leaped out, striking her like a bolt of lightning: breakthrough potential. Her pulse quickened. Could this be the linchpin she sought? She recalled her discussions with Jason and the potential investors, the pathways they had explored, but the missing piece still eluded her. The clock ticked loudly on her wall, adding to her mounting anxiety. Emily had been in this routine for years, all too familiar with the shadows of expectation. Transforming them into something formidable required her to tap into her father's indomitable spirit while forging her own path. She took a deep breath, reminding herself that clarity often emerged during moments of concentrated chaos. Suddenly, an idea struck her: something more than just the data in her father's notes, more than the logical presentation she thought she could offer. What if she transformed her presentation into a narrative that would captivate her audience, making them see not just the research but the human element behind it? She envisioned herself standing before investors, not merely pitching ideas but sharing a journey, one that intertwined her father's legacy with her own aspirations. Refusing to let fear dictate her steps, she began crafting a storyline, purposefully weaving facts with anecdotes from her father's life alongside her emerging vision. Balancing reverence for the past with a fierce determination for the future, she felt something shift within her, a grounding sense of purpose. This was not just her battle, it was an unveiling of who she really was, a powerful testament to familial bonds framed in her own light. As the hours waned, Emily found herself absorbed, losing track of time in a way that felt both liberating and exhilarating. But there was a nagging concern: how would Larson respond to her newfound confidence? The memory of his mocking tone lingered, a reminder of the voices that could threaten to drown her out. She pushed those thoughts aside, focusing instead on the task at hand. Even as she envisioned the atmosphere of the boardroom, the skeptical faces of the investors, and the undeniable presence of her critics, she felt a burgeoning strength rising within her. Yet doubt crept back in, whispering about the risks she faced. Would they embrace her story, or would it come across as mere embellishment? Meanwhile, a new challenge loomed larger than Larson's taunts, maintaining composure in the face of scrutiny. The final hours before the presentation were a test of everything she had been working toward. It was not just the fear of falling short, it was the chance to redefine her place in this world. Emily had ignited a spark, but with every ember, embers could catch fire, leading to both brilliance and destruction. Standing before her reflection in the office window, she searched her eyes, demanding assurance of her commitment. Would she fight to be heard, or allow the voices of naysayers to eclipse her resolve? The answer teetered on the edge of bravery, and each moment brought her closer to a decision. She knew her quest had only just begun, a journey rife with potential pitfalls, yet filled with the electrifying prospect of defining not just what she could inherit but what she could create. As she closed her laptop to prepare for the next day, a frantic thought raced through her mind: would the retrieval of that secret from her father's research propel her past the turbulence she faced, or would it lead her into deeper waters, tangled with the very shadows she fought against? With every beat of her heart echoing the promise of change, Emily made her way to the door, where the world of uncertainty awaited. But just as she turned the corner, her phone vibrated sharply against her palm, a notification illuminating the screen. The message read, "We need to talk. I found something important in the files." It was a text from Jason. The ground beneath her feet shifted, and the anxiety clawed back. She had been on the verge of something immense, but now she faced the new and unforeseen complexity of what could unravel next. What had Jason uncovered, and how would it impact everything she fought for? Emily's heart raced as she read Jason's message. The promise of an important revelation sent her thoughts spiraling in multiple directions. What had he discovered? The question gnawed at her, sharp and insistent, shattering her concentration as she stood there frozen. She turned back towards her desk, anxiety like static electricity in her veins, her fingers hovering uncertainly above the screen. With determination, she shook off her hesitation and tapped out a quick reply. "What did you find?" The familiar ping of outgoing messages felt oddly comforting amid the chaos. She knew Jason would reply soon, but until then, the ensuing silence pressed heavily upon her. While waiting, she sought solace in her father's notes once more, hoping to rekindle the fire she had felt earlier. But now, the words blurred together as relentless thoughts of what could be swallowed her whole. Her stomach churned, both with the fear of the unknown and the complexity of expectations, her own as much as those of others. Minutes turned into an eternity until her phone chimed again. Jason's response popped up, "I can't say here. Let us meet. 2 p.m. The urgency in his message only deepened her unease. Trusting her instincts, she decided that meeting Jason in person would be crucial. If the files held something significant, she needed to be prepared, armed with questions that would drive her into the heart of whatever mystery lay there. The clock ticked relentlessly as the hours dragged on. Coursing through her mind was the notion that every minute lost was a step away from her personal journey. In the confines of her office, Emily glanced outside. The sun shone brightly, mocking her inner turmoil. It was a visceral reminder that life moved forward, unaware of her battles. As she finally began packing her bag, she took a moment to breathe deeply. The air felt thick with tension, and she could almost feel the specters of doubt swirling in the corners of her mind. Maintaining clarity would be her anchor. Her presentation loomed like a storm cloud, but now it was accompanied by a brewing storm of revelations, each presenting a different set of questions and fears. Invigorated by a surge of determination, Emily grabbed her notebook. She scribbled key points and formulated strategic questions, mentally preparing herself for the complexities of what Jason might unveil. She had spent years overshadowed by expectations, measured only against her father's legacy. But now, with every word on the page, she began to reclaim the narrative. Her father's story was not just a hand-me-down tale, it was an inspiration and an enormous responsibility. The bus ride felt interminable. As the city slipped past her window like a blur of life, Emily fought to keep her thoughts organized. Was this the moment she had been waiting for? To step beyond her father's shadow, to carve out her identity in the turbulent waters of business? Or would she discover something that could fracture the fragile hope she had begun to cling to? The cafe where she met Jason buzzed with life-clinking cups, hushed conversations, laughter shaking free of anxious shoulders. As she approached their usual table, Jason was already deep in thought, eyes fixed on a file spread open in front of him. His expression was grave, and that alone sent ripples of anxiety through her, shifting her understanding of what was about to unfold. "Emily," he said slowly as she sat down, "we need to talk about what I found. It changes everything." Fear twisted in her gut, but a surge of determination followed. This was the moment she had to redefine herself to confront whatever truths were hiding within those files. She leaned in closer, determined to find the courage to face whatever revelations awaited her. Yet, something inside her echoed the fear of the unforeseen. What if it was a truth that would shatter everything she had built upon her father's legacy? The truth was there, lurking like a shadow ready to spring into light. As Jason began to explain, the stakes grew higher, pressing down on her with weight she couldn't fully comprehend. Emily's breath quickened. This was just the beginning, but what lay ahead promised to ripple through her life in profound and unimaginable ways. If the truth was as impactful as she feared, she might just find herself facing the ultimate test of who she really was beyond the expectations, beyond the legacy. And now, as she listened intently, she realized that this moment could very well propel her toward the horizon of her true self, or threaten to drown her in the depths of doubt. What would she discover, and could she withstand the force of a truth that could redefine everything? The air thickened around them as Jason unfolded the papers, his fingers trembling slightly. Emily struggled to maintain her composure, the facade of calmness slipping with each revelation he shared. Each word felt heavy, charged with significance, unraveling the threads of a narrative she thought she understood. "Emily, your father," Jason began, his voice steady but laden with that weight of urgency. "There were dealings he was involved in that, well, they're not what they seemed. These files reveal financial discrepancies, connections with some questionable partners." As he spoke, Emily's mind whirled like an out-of-control carousel. Her father, a man she had idolized, appeared less like the stalwart figure she'd known and more like an enigmatic shadow. How could it be that the very legacy she was fighting to honor was intertwined with questionable actions? The adrenaline coursed through her, urging her to act, to question, to delve deeper. "What do you mean questionable?" she managed, her voice nearly breaking. The coffee shop buzz faded into an indistinct backdrop, the clinking of cups and murmured conversations fading into silence as her world narrowed in around them. "There are names here, established figures in the industry with a history of shady dealings. Your father, he may have been trying to protect his reputation, but at what cost?" Jason's expression conveyed concern, but also a glimmer of hope, like he believed in her strength to confront this truth. Confronting her father's legacy head-on ignited a flicker of rebellion deep within her. Why had she only focused on what he had built without digging into how he had built it? That moment of reckoning solidified her purpose. She could not step into the future without first knowing the full scope of her past. Determined to navigate this minefield of revelations, she took a deep breath and allowed herself to absorb the implications. This wasn't just about her father, it was about understanding her own identity in a world inconsistent with her previous understanding. The chess pieces were moving. She could either remain passive or become an active player in her own narrative. "What do we do next?" she asked, a purposeful edge sharpening her tone. She had gone from a passive recipient of her father's legacy to an active participant in unraveling it, a shift that shocked her core. With each passing second, the truth unveiled itself not just as a revelation but as an opportunity. We need to investigate further, see if these connections still hold weight today. If we're going to do this, we need to be thorough and methodical, Jason replied. A plan began to shape around them like the first light breaking through a dark haze, illuminating the path ahead. As the conversation deepened, Emily began jotting down notes, her hands steadying. The initial shock transformed into a fierce resolve, and she recognized the moment for what it was: a pivotal intersection of past and future. If she slipped quietly from the shadow of her father's legacy into the realm of truth, she might forge a new identity, solid and unwavering, only to confront bigger challenges ahead. That realization brought a renewed clarity. This wasn't merely about defending her father's name but about forging her destiny, one choice at a time. Emily leaned in closer. What if I face resistance? What if uncovering this truth damages the legacy I intend to honor? It might, Jason admitted, the sincerity in his voice cutting through her doubts. But when things seem complicated, it often reveals truth. You'll have to decide which is more important: reputation or integrity. This moral dilemma hung between them like a challenge, and Emily felt the full weight of it settle upon her shoulders. She was no longer a passive observer, she was a protagonist in her own story. And while the stakes were personal, the revelation held weight far beyond the family name. It echoed in her own sense of self. With a deep breath, Emily straightened in her chair, resolved to seek the truth no matter how uncomfortable it became. The promise of personal empowerment was now within reach, but a whisper of uncertainty tinged her resolve. What if the truth she was determined to uncover led to a confrontation with forces far greater than her own? As the cafe buzzed back to life around her, she felt the first stirrings of potential autonomy rising within, like phoenix flames igniting in the depths of her being. But beneath that newfound strength, a lingering thought tugged at the back of her mind: the realization that this journey would require more than just courage, it would demand sacrifices. Could she embrace the truth even when the path ahead morphed into shadows of her father's past imperfections? With determination coursing through her veins, she knew one thing for sure: she was ready to face whatever consequences lay ahead, even as they beckoned her into the unknown. What if the true challenge wasn't just revealing the truth but also deciding who she would become when it came to light? Emily's heart raced as she stepped away from the cafe, the weight of Jason's revelations clinging to her like a shroud. The brisk air outside sharpened her senses, and the world felt both daunting and ripe for exploration. No longer content to dwell in the shadows of her father's legacy, she resolved to seek the truth, but the impending journey loomed ominously ahead. As she walked, thoughts tumbled through her mind like a torrent. Each new detail about her father's questionable dealings challenged everything she had believed about him. Question after question swarmed her: how did he get entwined with such figures? What did he think he was protecting, and at what cost? Each consideration ignited a growing sense of urgency and ambition within her, an ambition to uncover the whole truth, even if it shattered her own ideals. Emily knew that knowledge was power, but it was also a burden. The further she delved, the more she realized that confronting her father's legacy also meant confronting herself. The echo of Jason's words about reputation versus integrity resonated, stirring a conflict deep down. Who was she to judge a man she admired, yet now questioned? While honoring her father's image had been her previous aim, it felt increasingly fraught with deception. She yearned to expose the truth, but with that came the daunting prospect of dismantling her childhood beliefs. Reaching her office, a wave of frustration washed over her. Surrounded by reminders of her past complacency, she sat at her desk and stared blankly at the spreadsheets laid out before her. The numbers seemed to taunt her, and she shifted restlessly in her chair. How could she focus on projections and business metrics when her entire existence felt overshadowed by secrets? With a spark of determination, she flipped open a notepad to organize her thoughts. It was time to strategize. What did she need to know, and where could she find the answers? The idea of investigative work appealed to her. It transformed her personal turmoil into a mission, one where she could take charge. A methodical search could lead her toward answers and, perhaps, a clearer understanding of who she wanted to become on the other side. Her mind sorted through the contacts in her father's business network. Each name conjured up memories, discussions at family dinners, a synditon little anecdotes shared over holiday gatherings. However, they now looked different, tinted with suspicion. The first person she needed to approach was an old family friend, Harold, who had been deeply involved in her father's business dealings. Would he be her ally or another barrier to overcome? As she scribbled down a plan, a torrent of emotions surged through her: fear, resolve, and an odd thrill at the impending confrontation. She wasn't the naively complacent daughter anymore. This new version of Emily yearned to be a warrior for the truth. Even as her determination solidified, doubt skittered beneath the surface. What if Harold denied her the information she sought? What if he decided to protect the legacy she aimed to dismantle? These weren't merely idle concerns, they were tangible risks. She could be challenging individuals who might have been her allies turned adversaries. Drawing her resolve together, Emily picked up her phone. She needed to take action, to make a bold step in reclaiming her narrative. As she pressed the number for Harold, her heartbeat quickened, anticipation intertwining with anxiety. Before the ringing tone settled in, realization struck her: she was stepping onto a battlefield much larger than the realm of her father's reputation. This journey would demand everything from her. Each call, each interaction would be a test that could expose her vulnerabilities and reshape her understanding of self-worth. "Hello?" Harold's voice snapped her back from the precipice of her thoughts. "Hi, Harold. It's Emily," she began, her voice steadier than she felt. "I need your help with something." As she laid out her inquiry, her confidence climbed, the initial tremor of uncertainty morphing into clarity. The conversation unfolded, revealing layers she had never explored, sparking connections that might lead her closer to the truth. Yet lurking behind every word was a tempest of uncertainty. Was she ready for the profound changes that this journey could invoke within her? In that moment, she realized the truth could forge a new identity, but would she recognize herself on the other side? The echoes of Harold's responses danced in her mind, some were reassuring, others nestled in the fog of intricacy, but she knew that each step forward would peel back layers of deception. What would she discover next? Would she find the fortitude to confront her father's past without losing herself in the process? Determined to navigate this labyrinth of truth and deception, she prepared for whatever lay ahead, anchoring herself in the promise of transformation. The stakes were high, and as the final words of the conversation hung in the air, Emily sensed that the greatest revelations were yet to come. The following days blurred together as Emily immersed herself in research and conversations that challenged her perception of herself and her family's legacy. Each new lead propelled her deeper into a network of secrets that felt increasingly familiar yet unnervingly foreign. She had begun to scour the archives of her father's company, combing through dusty files buried beneath decades of paperwork. Slowly, an entirely different narrative began to unfold, one that emitted a faint but unmistakable scent of betrayal. The scent of stale coffee and worn paper filled her tiny office each morning, but it no longer dulled her resolve. Instead, it fueled her desire to uncover the truth at any cost. With each fragment of information she unearthed, her confidence burgeoned. She started reaching out to others who had worked alongside her father, people she once dismissed as mere business acquaintances: Henry, the diligent accountant, and Karen, the shrewd marketing director. Each conversation was a stepping stone, bringing not just revelations about her father's choices but also illuminating her own capabilities. One afternoon, Emily stood before the mirror in her office restroom, rehearsing her tone and body language for her upcoming meetings. Was it audacious to take this route? Would she be perceived as a usurper challenging the legacy? She took a deep breath, recognizing that reclaiming her narrative required not only tenacity but also a brave vulnerability. The reflection staring back at her was no longer the self-doubting woman she recognized. Instead, a fierce glint in her eye mirrored her evolving spirit. The following day, she met with Henry for coffee at a nearby bistro where they had shared laughs and pleasantries in the past. As they exchanged small talk, Emily carefully steered the conversation toward her father's legacy. She noticed his demeanor shift, pride turned into guardedness as she broached the sensitive topics of ethics and decisions made in the shadows of their industry. "Emily, some things are better left unexamined," he said cautiously, his voice weighted with unspoken truths. "But isn't part of honoring someone's legacy understanding their choices, even the bad ones?" Her words startled both of them. Each seemed a challenge. Was she ready to face the repercussions of such a direct confrontation? Henry flinched, but the stubborn glimmer in her eyes seemed to rekindle his resolve. He relented, sharing details she had only glimpsed before, a complex web of partnerships that spun beyond what she had known. As he spoke, dread mixed with excitement bubbling under the surface of their conversation. Shadows from her father's past began to stretch out before her like an intricate map, leading to places she would have never dared go before. With newfound knowledge came a sharpening of her instincts. Her father had been a meticulous planner but also a gambler, and that duality resonated within Emily. To tread down this path was risky, the stakes were rising. Were the decisions she'd make in pursuit of truth worth the chance of losing whatever semblance of family she had left? That evening, she huddled over her laptop, scrutinizing documents that drew her further down the rabbit hole. A sense of urgency thrummed in her veins as she pieced together the strands of what she had learned. Each revelation pushed her boundaries, confronting her fears of inadequacy, her family's legacy, and even her own professional ambitions. Reflecting on her progress, Emily noted how each truth revealed had forced a mindset shift. The more she learned, the more she felt her own identity twisting, evolving, or perhaps even transforming into someone stronger. She had gradually learned to accept that truth would come at the cost of disillusionment, but it was a risk she was willing to take. What kind of person would she be if she pressed on? Just then, her phone buzzed, illuminating a new message from Karen. "Can we talk? I think I have information that'll change everything," it read. A surge of anticipation coursed through her. Everything she had uncovered was about to culminate in a confrontation she hadn't anticipated, but was she equipped to handle it? In that moment, as the weight of her father's legacy bore down, Emily realized she was peeling back layers of herself too. The truth demanded more than just an unveiling of her father's choices, it would require her to face her own hidden depths. Taking a steadying breath, she began typing her response, aware that the journey was only intensifying and her most formidable challenges lay ahead. How much of her own essence would she uncover, and at what point would the truth become an unbearable burden? Would her resolve withstand the revelations yet to come? With her heart pounding in her chest and the flickering screen reflecting her determination, she sent the message, preparing for the next twist that awaited her on this treacherous path. Emily sat cross-legged in her living room, laptop balanced precariously on her knees. The message from Karen pulsed at the back of her mind, a metronome marking the rhythm of her anxiety and determination. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard, hesitating yet again. What could Karen possibly reveal that would change everything? The words loomed larger than life, they held the promise of clarity but also the weight of uncertainty. Driven by curiosity and a surge of adrenaline, she finally typed, "When and where?" Sending the message felt like a small victory, a confirmation that she was no longer simply a passive observer in her family's unfolding drama. She was reaching for answers she felt compelled to uncover, no matter the cost. Time stretched in the silence that followed, moments feeling like hours. She busied herself with her research, diving deeper into the company's past. Names leaped off the pages like phantoms, figures tied to decisions that had altered the trajectory of her father's career and, subsequently, their family. Each revelation carried a myriad of what-ifs, enticing and paralyzing. She discovered potential allies and adversaries she never knew existed, hidden in the layers of old tax filings and strategy documents. When her phone finally buzzed again, Emily nearly dropped her laptop in her haste to respond. "Tomorrow at the cafe. 3 p.m. Bring your discoveries, need to lay it all out, Karen's message read. Tomorrow. The single word electrified her veins. The stage was set, but for whom? She could already imagine the conversation peeling back the layers of facades, hers, Karen's, perhaps even her father's. As the evening wore on, her thoughts spiraled. Growing up, Emily had often felt overshadowed by her father's strong persona. The thought of challenging him, of challenging the legacy, had always seemed insurmountable. But with each piece of information she uncovered, it dawned on her, the true weight of a legacy wasn't merely in its preservation, it was in its scrutiny. She chewed her lower lip, contemplating this newfound perspective. Was she being reckless? The echoes of her father's past mistakes pressed on her conscience like a dark cloud. Yet here she was, preparing to confront those very shadows. It sounded so simple in her mind, detached from emotions, but she grappled with the reality of it just beneath the surface. To uncover another's truth, one must first confront their own, she muttered, transfixed by a realization. This journey wasn't just a quest for familial absolution, it was a revelation of self, doing away with the comforts of complacency she'd hidden behind for years. A new determination kindled inside her. She started organizing her notes, bulleted points of discussion, each a reflection of her evolving spirit and intelligence. She filled a notebook, colors and symbols dancing across the pages as if to capture her scattered thoughts, twisting connects to connections. Later that night, as she lay in bed staring up at the shadowed ceiling, fear mingled with anticipation. Tomorrow's meeting held the potential to either fracture her resolve or establish her footing in a world where she would no longer be an afterthought. Would Karen validate her journey? Would she be able to transcend being defined solely as her father's daughter and emerge as her own individual? A surge of adrenaline coursed through her, the stakes had never been higher. The morning sun would greet her with the choice to step deeper into what had previously been left undisturbed. And what if this new insight wasn't solely about her father's legacy? What if it altered the entirety of her destiny? Emily closed her eyes, steeling herself for the confrontation ahead. Tomorrow would be pivotal, an inflection point where she would stand shoulder to shoulder with her fears, ready to challenge the truths that sought to define her. With that thought stirring violently in her mind, she drifted into an uneasy sleep, anticipating the revelations that awaited. Would she step forward into her own light, or would the darkness of her father's past swallow her whole? When she awoke, the day felt electric with possibilities, each moment pulsing with the potential for revelation. One question hovered unbidden, insinuating itself into her thoughts: would the discoveries she embraced liberate her or leave her forever changed? As Emily prepared for the day, she understood the stakes had never been clearer. It was time to unearth the truth, no matter the cost. Yet an even more pressing dilemma lay ahead: how would she articulate her findings without losing herself in the process? Emily arrived at the café, a quaint establishment steeped in the aroma of coffee and pastries. The clinking of cups and the soft hum of chatter buzzed around her, but her mind pulsated with singular focus. Today would be a turning point, she felt it thrumming beneath her skin. As she scanned the couple of empty tables, a familiar figure waved to her from the corner. "Hey!" Karen greeted, her expression a mixture of excitement and concern. Emily slid into the chair across from her, tension coiling in the pit of her stomach. "Thanks for meeting me," Emily replied, matching Karen's enthusiasm but sensing the gravity of what was to come. "I've been compiling the records you sent me. There's far more to this than I initially thought," Karen spoke, a note of urgency threading her voice. With that simple statement, Emily's heart raced, realizing they were on the precipice of uncovering something monumental. "Tell me everything," she urged, leaning in. Karen opened a folder brimming with documents, the papers almost spilling from the edges, and Emily held her breath as she scanned the pages. Financial statements, emails, names of influential partners. Theirs was an intricate web, a narrative that expanded beyond her father's life's work. Your father's dealings with these partners, they weren't just business relationships. There are mutual interests tied to some very controversial research initiatives. He willingly compromised his ethics for the sake of advancement, Karen revealed, her gaze unwavering. A knot twisted inside Emily. The noble legacy she strived to uphold now felt activated by hidden disarray. Do you think it was all intentional? She stammered, teeth grazing her lower lip with anxiety. I can't say for certain, Karen replied, her tone thoughtful. He might have rationalized it in his mind. But choices lead to consequences, and the further we dig, the murkier it becomes. In that moment, clarity flooded Emily's mind. This quest was more than reclaiming a tarnished legacy, it was a means to shape her own identity free from the shadows. Every word exchanged was drawing her closer to the conclusion that she wouldn't be defined by her father's past mistakes. This isn't just about him anymore, is it? Emily considered aloud, the realization dawning with each word. It's about building something valuable, one grounded in integrity. A flicker of admiration flashed across Karen's face. Exactly. If you confront the complexities of his legacy head-on, you not only create a new narrative, but you also modify the dialogue on what the future holds for you in this company. The realization that she could redefine her destiny electrified Emily. With a specific plan emerging in her mind, she began to strategize. What if we take these findings and transform them into a narrative? A presentation that emphasizes the need for transparency and ethical practices moving forward? Karen beamed at her, the enthusiasm rejuvenating the energy at their table. That's exactly the approach we need, it showcases your courage and embodies what you want to stand for. You're not just left with a legacy to reconsider, you're crafting your own. In the heat of the moment, Emily's resolve solidified. She envisioned the big presentation, investors in attendance, and the statements she would make that would echo with authenticity. The idea of speaking unabashedly about complicated truths exhilarated her, urging her further into the light. I'm ready to face the board. Let them see that I'm not just my father's daughter, but an individual capable of making a profound impact. The truth will not only free me, it will fortify the legitimacy of the research we're doing. Karen's eyes widened with admiration as she nodded. Let us start compiling everything you have, and together, we'll craft a presentation worthy of this moment. Over the next few hours, the cafe transformed into a workspace, ideas flowing freely. The depth of information they were piecing together burgeoned Emily's confidence, forging her burgeoning identity. As evening descended outside, Emily felt an unwavering sense of pride intertwining with purpose. They were preparing for something monumental, unveiling the chaotic truth of her father while simultaneously kindling her own clarity and direction. Together, we'll lead this change, Emily declared, her voice steady, burgeoning with intention. When they finally parted ways, Emily walked home in a fog of determination. The barriers once erected by insecurity were crumbling beneath her feet, and a spark of authenticity flickered in her heart. With every step, anticipation swelled within her, intertwining hope with the possibilities that lay ahead. She had confronted not only her father's legacy but, ultimately, herself. As she prepared for the upcoming presentation, her mind echoed with clarity. This moment defined her journey toward personal sovereignty. Gone was the timid shadow of her father's past, a fierce, resolute individual stood in its place, ready to unveil the truth and embrace the future on her own terms. She felt empowered, like a warrior adorned with the armor of knowledge and conviction. This wasn't just about legacy or respect, it was about a pride and acknowledgement that she had gleaned not merely from her father's shadow but from her relentless pursuit of the truth. Emily took a moment to stand in front of her mirror that evening, staring at her reflection with newfound acceptance. She witnessed the transformation rooted in confrontations that revealed the very essence of who she had become. The road ahead would be challenging, but with a heartbeat now synchronized with her values, she knew she was armed with the courage to stand firm against any adversary. This was her story now, her moment to carve a legacy built on resilience, honesty, and the pursuit of her own authentic path. As Emily drifted off to sleep, a smile tugged at her lips, and she settled into the soothing embrace of excitement. Tomorrow, She would reclaim her narrative and confront the legacy left behind within her father's shadows. She found the light she always carried within her, ready now to shine brighter than ever. The call to action resonated as her last thought played out in her mind: the truth will set me free. And with that, Emily drifted into rested determination, ready to rise and conquer her battlefield of personal resolution without hesitation. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Comment your reactions and theories about this ending. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. You need to subscribe now. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait even one more second to share.